Hey, good evening. Welcome to Frontline Dispatches on Organizing Upgrade, a show dedicated to spotlighting the most urgent left organizing and activism happening around the country and beyond for racial and economic justice, and much more. And stay tuned for future episodes of Frontline Dispatches every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, that's 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific. My name is Montague Simmons, and I'll be tonight's host. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, please leave comments and chats. We're going to be monitoring those as the show goes on. And if you haven't yet, on Facebook, give Org Upgrade a like, or on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. And finally, to stay up to speed with all the amazing content coming out of Organizing Upgrade, sign up at our website to hear about upcoming events, videos, articles, and about left strategy for organizers. All right, let's get into it. So tonight, my guest is actually Chanelle Helm. She's a community and political organizer and is one of the core lead organizers of Black Lives Matter Louisville and a co-founder of the Reparations Roundtable. Collectively, BLM Louisville has actually raised more than $5 million for various efforts, including the Louisville Community Bail Fund, buying abandoned houses to give to Black and Brown Megas, eviction prevention, abortions, environmental emergencies, organizing, and resistance training. Chanelle is a single mother of 2 young children. She spends most of her time actually raising her kids in a multi-generational household and fighting for Black liberation on all fronts. Chanelle, hey, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Good. So the world's attention turned to Louisville, first in March of this year, immediately in the wake of Breonna Taylor's murder. But you, and specifically with BLM Louisville, you've been organizing there for years. Would you ground us kind of by just talking about the Louisville that you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Where we at is just really, unfortunately, traditional for what is taking place around Black folks, not just Black death by the hands of the police, but also the maneuvering and the erasure, the racial banishment of Black people in Louisville. It has been a constant for today. The FOP sent out another letter again, trying to bypass the people say. And it's just something that we constantly continue to go through. And what we're glad is that folks can actually see that and see what is happening in fruition, right? So what we've been organizing around is making sure that people understand that we are in an eviction and housing crisis here, that we also are in a food apartheid, that they are taking away our options to fresh and safe food. We live in, majority of us live in the West End, and it is totally polluted. We can barely grow food there. Our reproductive justice rights are also just totally ignored. So it's a long-standing issue, and to highlight, say her name underneath Breonna Taylor in this moment brings out a lot of those things, right? Because we start looking at how the police force can create these street teams and put these street teams wherever they want to be at, folks to really understand that there are some things that are happening in parts of folks' neighborhoods that don't happen in other folks' neighborhoods. I cannot believe that we still thought that that was not a thing. I'm not saying that we couldn't, that mostly white folks can't, but that we also are looking at what is happening to our children in the midst of COVID. Some of those numbers have not stopped around youth violence and what is happening to the children. And so that's been a very big concern with us, as well as other Black community leaders in Louisville, community organizers trying their best to bring in transformable programming and stuff.
Okay. You use the term racial banishment. Mm-hmm. Would you talk more deeply about the eviction crisis and how gentrification is playing out in Louisville?
Oh, gentrification is played out, right? I'm glad that you said it like that. But yeah, racial banishment is the cornerstone of Louisville. Actually, I know people have heard before, selling people down the river. That actually happened because of Louisville. You got here any type of way you got here back in the day. You were put on an auction block that is now the Yum Center, a place where the University of Louisville plays their basketball games. You probably have watched the NCAA play their games as such. And it takes place right there. So we're looking at corporations taking advantage of historical sites, something that we raise up too around like where economic centers were here in Louisville as well. Right on the cusp of the West End is 9th Street, and 9th Street used to be this economic hub for Black folks across not only just Louisville, the state, but also for the commerce that went down the Ohio River. They totally destroyed that, and they continue to keep destroying any type of economic progress that we make. So then we start seeing locations of Black folks get pulled into a certain area and then spread out again, and just keep, it kind of reminds you of like a heartbeat until there won't be any more beating. One of the last places where Black folks were racially banished from was Beecher Terrace. And Beecher Terrace was a place where 1 in 4 folks had gone to prison, and it ended up being 1 in 3. Where another 1 in 5 folks were murdered. Hold on one second. And so we start seeing where this increased incarceration starts taking place from this one specific project. And that project is taking place in a historical neighborhood called Russell. At this time, the city then begins doing this big revitalization push around how they can keep generational wealth with Black families. Knowing that you owe Black families in West End, how are you going to be responsible for creating the generational wealth that they need? What we then see, and what also takes place relating into the Breonna Taylor case, is that they have created place-based street units who are going out and looking at certain locations and certain houses and trying to take them away from the neighborhood and other folks and stuff. We've seen this throughout Louisville's history, and it's nothing new to us. It's nothing new to like our elders, and they've been proclaiming this and saying this. And it is clear that the leadership in Louisville is ignoring a very major important piece around like, how does one stay at home? What is home to folks? And then how do we take care of ourselves if we don't have access to a well-being that centers around making sure we don't have to look over our shoulders to find housing in the next few days or months or what have you. Even currently now, during a time when we're supposed to be hunkering down close to home, we have had almost 300 evictions last week, even underneath the CDC. And there's just nowhere for folks to go. Once you have an eviction here, you are not getting housing anywhere else if you need to rent. And most people in Louisville and in Kentucky need to rent. So we're trying to push cancel the rent as much as possible. Also call out these city influencers who are actually where Mayor Fisher sits in their pockets, who pay for a lot of legislation, we're learning. And so a lot of them have been very upset because we've demanded reparations from them and pushing them towards making sure that that happens in the city.
Yeah. So can you help like unpack like the way they're using policing and explicitly like how this has actually played directly into Breonna Taylor's murder? Because I think that's a piece that folks still haven't made a connection for.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So when a lot of our organizing takes place because we are tired of the resources leaving our neighborhoods. It is very clear who those resources go to. For places like the West End, we have huge multinational companies that are in West End of Louisville. They absolutely sit there. That's where the hub is at. Brown-Forman, who makes the majority of the liquor, Reynolds factory, and a few other factories, people who make like key components of parts and stuff. So they sit there. We don't reap the benefits from those businesses, and they do not go back into the community. So it's one of your most blighted areas of the city where a quarter of Black folks live at here in Louisville. Within that is learning that the redlining that took place, and everybody thinks it's so historical, continues to take place in so many different ways. Ordinances, you can just look at the pattern in which people have voted and how redlining still plays that part today. Arrest records, deaths, etc. And so when we're looking at how they're tracking folks who are this war on Black people, this war on drugs, how they're tracking Black people and that war, it's a lot of our street teams who are doing that. A lot of our mobile unit 9 is what we call them. And they go around acting like they're local ATF or whatever.
These are cops.
Go ahead.
These are cops. I just want to make sure.
These are police officers. Yes, these are mobile street units. These are their folks that they just slap on any. At first, they slapped on anything. They look like narcs. You know, your narc uniform, the Asics, the Wranglers. But no, like your regular little I'm trying to be hip uniform. And then we fought back in 2014 to get them in a uniform, and so they were able to get into a uniform, which was still khaki pants and like black at the top. So they were putting on whatever. They were able to maneuver many no-knocks throughout the neighborhood. So a lot of folks we noticed thought it was our city who was like, hey, let's end no-knocks. That was actually us. That was the community and a BLM organizer named Keturah Haran, who was like, we can get an end to these no-knock warrants. This is very much a problem for us. But if you look into your city, it's probably very much a problem for the folks that live there. People do not understand how often no-knock warrants are carried out in Black and brown communities. This is the majority of the ways that people are shot by the police, but it is also a lot of damage and a lot of mistrust that happens in these neighborhoods. The police busting into your home for no reason whatsoever. So that had taken place, but those folks that actually carry those things out are not trained one way or another around how to actually look for those things. Hold on one second, because I have a child interrupting me.
Should be right back with us, folks.
Children don't want to leave you alone, and it's fine. And I just realized this room had pocket doors. So I was like, yes. But yeah, what we started to see is not only was the FOP actually creating their own gang, right? They created these unions. These are not the typical ways folks make unions, because we still have people like, oh, isn't it okay that they have a union? Absolutely not. You're a service agent. And it's cool that like folks are at different works are making their unions. The FOPs, Fraternal Orders of Police, are not actual unions in the way that they are protecting their workers and looking out for their best interests. They are making sure that these group of folks on the police forces are able to do things that other citizens are not able to do. And folks are still like, but yeah, they're the police. Yeah, they are still citizens. They are citizens who do a job to uplift the law. Instead, police officers go out and make sure they can observe somebody doing the breaking of the law, carry out the law on their own, and then be able to adjudicate that all in the street before it even reaches a courtroom. From that, we know that there are like 4 street teams that are out. One of those was new. That was the place-based unit. This unit went out and basically looked for properties that were aligned with the scope at which they needed to gentrify the Russell neighborhood, put it that way. If we had a map, and I like maps, if we had a map, we would see where this is 9th Street and this is moving west. And so 9th Street is here where we are today. This is Beecher Terrace, and Beecher Terrace is no more. So it's at 9th Street. There's a business section down here called 10th Street. And so that has moved into the West End going that way. Wow. What we have now are different spots. I'm going the wrong way. All different spots throughout Russell that are being taken over and turning into a business district, which is basically what they want. It's really interesting to me that our cities continue to move gentrification throughout Black neighborhoods, and they can't keep up with the demand that they have in their own city business districts. Our business district is not doing well. And I think that's where a lot of the pushback is happening. That center, Beecher Terrace, has been there since 1930s. It is the first park for Black folks that centers around that. They have now declared to call it Beecher Terrace, the new renovation, but also, again, they took away grocery stores from these people for over 15 years. So you could not easily walk out and go get groceries anywhere. Okay, fine. You're in an urban atmosphere. All right, maybe you need to go like 2-3 blocks. You can't do that. You had to travel 20 some odd blocks to go to the grocery store. And then they start popping in the very removable cheap in stores like Dollar Tree, Family Dollar, and Dollar General, all coming from the same supplier. These items at the store are very cheap, and then they move over, right? So if you're able to bust through people's funds rapidly, if you're giving people the funds rapidly, that money is just recycling. And so they were able to like continue to move drugs into those areas. We've seen heroin come back up. We see white folks, like these are predominantly Black areas. White folks just do not randomly be there unless you're the landlord. We see white folks who are on drugs dropped off by the police randomly on these streets. Our children are walking down the street. There are like white people laying out on the streets and stuff. They're passed out. Some of them seizing and going into, overdosing. We also have where a lot of homes, regardless if people are in them or not, start getting these green and pink stickers on them. So we're like, what are these? A lot of them are the city actually charging people to fix up their own homes. So they're not fixing them up. They're just going to give you a fine for having your home dilapidated because you don't have any money. Historically redlined. So this police force is basically your redlining just Steppo. They are going through and making sure that they can like abuse and terrorize folks in those neighborhoods. There have been several police shootings in the Russell neighborhood within the last 10 years. But we're also looking at, with the Breonna Taylor case, how they had a warrant back in December center around the address that's in Russell. And Russell is downtown, and I'm still talking about Urbana. Where Breonna lived at was an apartment complex in the south end of Louisville, which is very much suburbia. Since there's nobody there, it's a trap house. Like it literally is abandoned. And they are focused on this address saying that they need to run up through it. You see no activity, but little activity at this address or any, and associate that with somebody out in suburbia. And so it came to show that somebody, of course, again, ran a rumor about where something might be at, which in turn turned the other street force, which was that mobile unit that the 3 officers are on and several others, going to Breonna's house and shooting them up that evening. What we then find out is that the city then tries to buy that location, that block, and they utilize this is like, where is Annalisa Kinney? What's her name? Annalise?
Yeah. Keating, yeah.
It is, ain't it? Yep. They utilize a nonprofit to say, hey, I know you're looking for housing. You're going to be in charge of this project. How do you know that this person is in charge of the project? We're talking about property. You got to talk about renovation costs. You also need to talk about coding. There's so many things that go with like housing and renovations. Didn't do any work. And then they bought the house, and the house was solidified, bought indeed on Breonna's birthday, if that isn't a slap in the face, wow. Not only just to Black women, but like to the entire neighborhood of Black folks who have been striving forever in that place. My great-grandmother and great-grandfather moved their children there. They had my grandmother in a house in Russell. Russell used to be like Harlem for Louisville. And a lot of people will tell you that people rolled through the South and you stopped in Louisville, got your drink, got you something to eat. It's where the hamburger was made. You get you, we have all different types of drinks they made. You might come to the Derby and then you go on about your way. And they are constantly destroying the makeup of our community for white supremacy. And that's the only thing that we're seeing right now. It is white supremacy that is trying to make sure that we are erased by taking our culture, by erasing the foods we eat. David McAtee is the barbecue man. It doesn't even smell the same at that corner because he's gone. And he had a right to defend himself. If he did shoot back, even if he didn't, I'm pretty proud of that, because you cannot keep coming around and terrorizing people. You just cannot keep doing it. And we have been terrorized by the police forever. People always talk about like young Black boys walking down the streets. I mean, I have my own stories of just being scared of being followed by police cars walking down the street. And it wasn't for safety, because then they tease you or they're interrogating you, they're shining lights in your face. You know, these are the things that are still happening to our babies. And we're wondering why our babies are acting out like this. Why are they performing like this? Forget coronavirus. Like, who is there with your child when you are not, when you are outside? So it's been really interesting uncovering all these different characters who don't usually get to be seen and trying to keep them up front instead of focusing on, you know, other folks who just, Lord, we can talk about those later.
Yeah. For those that may just be joining us, welcome to Frontline Dispatches, a show of Organizing Upgrade. And tonight we're talking to Chanelle Helm with BLM Louisville. And she's literally giving a very deep rundown on how both gentrification and has really wed itself to over-policing. And both of them are advancing white supremacy in Louisville in a real way, in ways that we're not seeing the media pick up on. One, we encourage you to drop comments because especially for the organizers, it sounds like these are pieces that we're not hearing about. And like Ziamara just noted something similar and how that played out in LA. These are the same dynamics that we're seeing all over the country. So please chime in. But Chanelle, I do want to invite you to talk about the way y'all actually approaching the work, because unlike the way everybody sees it, they think everything that BLM is doing is just about police, and that's not it. That's not how you hold in your folks. You got what, 4 different fronts that you moving on?
So we had the amazing Aaron Goggins here. I got to give a shout out to Aaron, because Aaron is like, when we talk about organizing and creating ecosystems, Aaron's like, we got to put the thing and name the thing and say what the thing is. Come to find out, we have been organizing since 2016. When we became BLM and actually took what we were moving in that Ferguson uprising demands and moved into 4 teams. We thought we only had 4 teams, and they were healing, education, police abolition, which we called accountability then at the scope at which we knew about the police, and the housing team. And so our housing team has been the most robust because there have been places that have just been vacant and abandoned all our lives in West Louisville. You just seen something and just imagine that you can tell it was built in the 20s or 30s, and people used to hang out on the balconies and stuff. And it's just sitting there, just dilapidated, and wanted to get rid of those. But when we did door knocking and we go out and we scope neighborhoods and talk to folks, and folks come up to us and tell us things, everybody says, why don't we just take the homes and renovate them and just give them away to people? Because there's really that many. And there are too many Black families who are homeless right now in Louisville. And that is happening every day. Shout out to us. We just got 2 large families housed today, and they will have their rent paid up for 6 months. But we also want to move them to a way to empower themselves. So that's what the housing team is about. Being able to call out shifty landlords and be able to move people to a place of dignity and actually have a place that they can call home, which also opens up a lot of our conversation. What is home? And understanding that a lot of people can't have that. We also do a lot of food justice. So that happened to be something that we noticed, that we do a lot of mutual aid, and lo and behold, we had a robust mutual aid team. We knocked down a lot of different barriers here in the city with several folks who are very unapologetic, don't care if you call us angry Black women, but are ready to throw down any and every time that we need to for our folks. And in that mutual aid is making sure that we dish out about 50 meals a day. So a dish about that big. I don't want to say a big old plate, we dealing out pork chops and stuff. But we just make sure we give that to anybody, and a lot of folks that we've met along the way who are food insecure. During the protest, Kroger's has a racist owner down here and closed off an entire shopping mall. We don't have that many shopping malls in West Louisville. And that is one of the key epicenters in West Louisville. It's the 28th and 26th Street corridor. And people could not even get anything. So they I don't even want to say they looted it. They took what was theirs and then went about their day. And so Black folks and a lot of other folks started raising money to go grocery shopping for our elders who were not going to be able to get anywhere during COVID, during protests, which we had a lot of restrictions on our movement. And we began Feed the West. Feed the West got a $500,000 within 3 days. And the curator of that then went on to get a grocery store, which we were able to buy with our initial 3.5 that came in for the Louisville Community Bail Fund. We went ahead and purchased her building so we can get that going. And the team is just full steam ahead behind that. We also have an organizer who began collecting new clothes and actually redistributing them to folks in the West End because we couldn't get to the stores. They had been closing the malls on us. because a lot of people have been threatening to go there. So at the same time, you have mamas, everybody's a mama, have mamas who were down to be like, if I can't get things for my child, I know there is somebody else who cannot navigate this and doesn't have the spoons to navigate this. So Clothe the West was born. All these things I'm naming off, you can go to every platform and go like them. And they're doing amazing work. And so our organizer takes new and reaches out to like a lot of these designers too, and have them like, I know you got leftover clothes, so like just bring them, and we give them out to the community. Also in our mutual aid was a strength of Care Bears who were willing to do some rapid response on the go crisis interventions on the streets. And we do that pretty much often with our security team. And so a formidable Care Bear team has been made, which we really love and people really love it. We're able to make sure it's a part of our security teams and evacuation teams in any actions. The police abolition team did birth the Louisville Community Bail Fund, and we've been around since Black August of 2017. Joined the National Bail Fund Network in June of 2017, and the National Bailout Network of beautiful Black folks across the South mainly, and everywhere else, just bailing out Black mamas. Shout out to Black Mamas Bailout. And Juneteenth bailout, Black August bailout, Home for the Holiday bailouts coming up, y'all. And we want folks to understand, because it seems like the community bail funds were under attack. And we thought it was just really interesting that like people would actually attack community bail funds, not understanding how rooted in liberation and abolition that they are, when we have the tools that we need to make sure that our folks have support, and then providing that prisons don't actually have to exist, that jails don't actually have to exist, and that we have more common sense than those that make the laws who would keep people in jail during a global pandemic where you cannot safely obtain water, which is trifling and dirty and gets cut off at night, electricity. There is no temperature control. There is no resources to access to medicines or vitamins or anything. And that is continuing to happen. So with the money that we've gotten in, a total of over almost $5 million, we've used almost $3 million of that in bail alone. And then a few other, like $250,000 to help people with resources, getting food, getting on their feet. One of our social workers with the bail fund has put together a yard service. And so they've been out there knocking out everybody's yard. I mean, they've been doing some of our properties. We've also purchased and taken back some vacant and abandoned buildings, a church that was just sitting vacant for 3 years. And people have been loving to use that space. We have a warehouse now. We also bought a house for some of these families, so we don't have to use Airbnbs. We've been making deals with Airbnb owners and putting in the large houses and putting families in there. But now we have a house that we can do that in with really large rooms. So we're getting all of that together. And our first house is about to get given away.
So Chanelle, as we begin to wrap up, like if people want to support you, like what's your call to action? Like what do you need them to do at this moment?
What I need folks to do is go to investdivest.org and read that over again and follow our action steps, especially around our demands. You can also find those demands at fightforbreonna.org. Those key demands are going to dismantle the police system that we know it here in Louisville, and we can do those things. The demand that we're really key on right now is fire the police officers and revoke their pensions. And so when we're talking about the FOP and we're initiating conversation around the FOP contract, we are talking about how they have made sure that legislation favors them and is very difficult to change. We just need more folks to know that like this isn't a regular corporation. This is the people's job to make sure that the police adhere to what it is that the people need, not to what the police need. This isn't an agency that can just operate willy-nilly as they want to. And we're also very upset that the folks that are in charge at the police, LMPD and the FOP continue to keep playing the people in a way that ignores the need for what it is that we want to keep ourselves safe about. We want folks to amplify the hashtag We Keep Us Safe. We do have all the tools that we need to make sure that we can provide community safety and community defense through community care for our folks. And so if you're somebody who would love to get down with that, like hit us up. There's probably somebody local that is with the movement with you, either with M4BL or the Black Liberation Movement. We do need all hands on deck. We also want folks to check out a petition that we have at Advancement Project that does demand that we defund LMPD. LMPD increased their budget in the middle of June, at the end of June, around our defund campaign, when we were letting folks know that $100,000 can go to so many different families and so many different new agencies, to where we don't have to beg the city for grant money, or we don't have to like beg these cities influencers to do what's right. And if you want to donate, that's fine. We have that at like the bit.ly link. What is it? Capital BLMLOU. That's a general link. Or the Louisville Community Bail Fund to help out with that. We have trainings every now and then. We do have a robust remote support that folks can do. And we have a call every Sunday at 7 if folks want to join in.
Chanelle, thank you for making time to talk to us tonight, because y'all busy. Y'all busy.
We are busy. I'm late for a meeting now.
Yeah. So to the audience, first and foremost, definitely hit the sites that Chanelle's already named for you. If you enjoyed this video, stay up to speed with all the amazing content coming out of Organizing Upgrade. Sign up at the website. Make sure that you actually like this page on Facebook. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Thank you to everybody who actually joined us today. Thank you to our guest, Chanelle Helm. Thank you to our production team at Organizing Upgrade. And then please join us again next week. Same day, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, and 4 p.m. Pacific. My name is Montague Simmons. Thank you for joining us tonight. And thanks, Chanelle.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you too.